sort of actually introduce myself. My name is Mendes. As I've said to a number of you, I'm retired. I used to be a technology transactions lawyer for 32 years, as I just mentioned to a colleague. These days I try not to work too much because I seem to get involved in things. So I teach and consult these days. What I'm going to talk, is that enough of an introduction? That's probably enough. I know that I stand between you and the end of 2 days, 2 very long days, so I'm going to try and accelerate my presentation as fast as I possibly can. What I'm going to talk to you about is about the entrepreneurial technology transfer office. That's a very large topic. There's so many things that could be said about technology transfer offices at universities and research institutes being entrepreneurial in the way they go about seeking to engage with commercial partners, seeking to license the outcomes of the research in the universities and research institutes. But the specific thing I thought I would talk to you about this afternoon is what we might describe or call the commercialization window. Just to narrow down a very large topic into something that's perhaps a little bit more manageable. And what I'm going to share with you are some thoughts or some observations that I've made when I've been assisting some tech transfer officers become more effective or improve their processes. And some of the observations I've made about things that they do that perhaps can be improved. You might think that some of the things I'm going to mention are things that you would expect universities in technology transfer offices of universities in developing countries to be doing. But in fact, what I'm going to describe to you are things that I've observed TTOs doing in developed countries. And what that really is showing is that even universities and TTOs in developed countries are not perfect in the way that they go about seeking to achieve the technology transfer objective. To start off, their outlook. Let's talk about the outlook of TTOs. Countries have boundaries, of course, but technology does not have boundaries. And one of the things that surprises me when I see this occurring from time to time is when a TTO makes a very conscious decision to confine its patenting activities to its own country and not go beyond its own country. And that's very disappointing and sad to see, because it means that the potential economic benefits to be achieved are not being realised, where they're patenting in their own country only, or a small number of countries only, rather than in all the countries that you might prudently consider patenting in. They're not taking the advantage of maximising the commercial opportunity that they have. They shouldn't confine patenting to their own country. If you patent in India only, for example, you're only going to realise economic benefits in India. You're not going to realise economic benefits from the use of the technology that's been patented in India, its use in other countries. India represents, like any country, India represents a very small proportion of the world, 3.3% of the world economy measured in terms of GDP. Patenting only 3.3% of the globe is just simply not enough. I looked up some patent filing statistics for India in preparation for this talk. Between 2000 and 2014, there's been a big surge in the number of patent applications filed by Indian applicants. I'm talking about foreign applications, but Indian applications by Indian residents, Indian nationals. And they've increased by 6 over that 14-year period. PCT applications have increased by a similar number, by 7. However, there's still a big difference between national applications and PCT applications. In 2014, some 12,000 national applications, only some 1,400 PCT applications. That's a difference of 10,000, almost 11,000 applications. And there's a number of ways that you could interpret this statistic, even acknowledging that there is going to be some national applications where no PCT is filed, and there may be a few national applications in different countries. But I think it's true that the bulk of the national applications are not necessarily in relation to technologies that are being patented in other countries. A very crude comment is to say that there's 10,790 technologies in 2014 that came from Indian research or Indian innovation, did not go global, did not go beyond India. And that's partly demonstrating or part of the contribution to that is the way that TTO sometimes behave. Let me tell you about a Chinese university that I've been working with for a year or so. Their policy, their very intentional policy, was to patent only in two countries. Their own country, in China, because that's where they work, and in the United States, and to patent nowhere else. Both of these were national applications. They never filed a provisional, they never filed a PCT. They really had very much a shopkeeper approach to tech transfer. I'll describe what that is in more detail a bit later. But for the moment, the shopkeeper approach to tech transfer is basically to say, well, I'm the tech transfer office, here is the innovations that my university or my research institute has developed, here's my shop, and now I wait for the customer to come in through the door. What's wrong with this approach from this Chinese university? What's the matter with it is that, well, three things are matter. The first thing the matter with it is it breaks that cast in stone rule about patenting by universities. It ignores what we call the commercialisation window, and it's a very passive way of undertaking tech transfer rather than the more entrepreneurial one. What's this cast in stone rule? The cast in stone rule is a tech transfer office or a university will pay or incur the cost of filing a provisional patent application. It will go so far as to file a PCT application. But it is a cast in stone rule that will not pay national phase patenting expenses. It needs a commercial partner to fund those patents, national phase patenting expenses. A cast in stone rule with very, very few exceptions. Of course, what that means is that if you file a prof, if you file a PCT and you're approaching national phase and you don't have a commercial partner, then the implementation of this cast in stone rule means that you must kill the project. The project is not worth continuing if you're too close to national phase. Because you're never going to pay those national phase expenses. Therefore, there's nothing to commercialise. Therefore, there's no purpose in putting resources to the commercialisation of that project. It would be more prudent to use the resources that the tech transfer office has got to push forward and make progress with the pipeline of projects, newer projects that are coming through. So a TTO just simply will not incur national phase expenses. It's too expensive to do that. For a large portfolio of patents coming out of university research, it's just too much money. The university or research organisation cannot justify making an investment of that magnitude and diverting its resources away from research. So what's the commercialisation window? The commercialisation window is the window of opportunity, time frame, that a TTO has available to it to commercialise the parcel of IP. How long that time frame is and when it starts depends on whether the TTO's perspective is that of a shopkeeper or whether it has a more entrepreneurial perspective. So let me describe the shopkeeper mindset. The shopkeeper mindset for a TTO is, just like in a shop, stock arrives. For a TTO, there's an invention disclosure. In a shop, they determine if it's saleable. The TTO makes a commercialisation assessment. In a shop, they'll package it. They'll make it attractive, ready for sale. The TTO will patent it. The shopkeeper will wait for the customer. The TTO will sit back passively and wait for a licensee or an investor to come on. So the last, many universities, many research institutes don't file probes, don't file PCTs. They only file national applications, often in their own country. And the result, therefore, is that they're taking that stock approach, waiting for the stock to mature into a patent or at least a national phase application, and then waiting passively for the buyer to come along. What they do is have a very narrow commercialisation window. If we look at the time frame, very typical time frame in a university, there's a time when the tech transfer office first becomes aware of the parcel of IP. There's then an invention disclosure. There's lots of other things going on in the meantime, but for our purposes, there's then a provisional application filed, there's a PCT